Hi everyone, this is Jamie and welcome to another episode of the Yogi Within podcast. Okay, on today's episode, I'm doing this one more on the fly. I had intended to do a podcast today specifically on moon days and a little bit of the history around moon days and specifically observing the changes that had happened lately in this week and a bit of a general discussion around the tradition of moon days in Ashtanga Yoga. But I'm going to save that for another episode because I think this is an important topic to discuss and this is an important thing to talk about this week. For those of you that listen to my podcasts historically and recently, you'll know that I've spoken about things around this and topics around gurus, adjustments, and general, we could say bad behavior or failures within the Ashtanga Yoga system and maybe even in yoga traditions as a whole. But I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically today and more frankly, really, because a lot of these things really do need to be said. And I'll talk a little bit about why I think that this is actually coming up lately. So let's just give a bit of background on this, because this is an important thing to understand of why did we come to yoga? Why did we come to yoga? What's the reasons we came to yoga traditions? And what was it we were looking for from teachers and specific shalas or spaces? And I would say most people come to yoga because they're trying to heal something, They're trying to heal something within their body, their mind, their whole being. There's something that is not quite right. And I don't want to say broken, but a lot of us come to yoga because we're looking to heal something. And you could say that this was a large part of yogic traditions, Let's just forget, the bigger questions. Let's forget finding out who we really are, where we're from, and maybe some of the more deeper philosophical aspects of yoga traditions that I've talked about quite a lot on this podcast. But a lot of us come to yoga because we're looking to heal something. We're trying to find some truth. We're trying to find some answers to ourselves and our lives. And eventually I think that once those patterns get broken down, we start to move much more into the deeper layers. But it's definitely not about money or business, and it's definitely not about achieving asanas, We come into, most beginners, most new students are not really interested in that when they come to yoga. They come because they're looking to heal something within themselves, And this, you could say, was the original basis largely with Ashtanga Yoga. As I understand it, one of Mr. Joyce's first jobs as a teacher was to heal someone, It was really to look at somebody and try to heal their body and heal their whole being. Mr. Iyengar came to yoga as a sickly child with polio, as I understand it. So lots of people come to yoga because they're looking to heal something. I'll give a short story actually, which kind of resonates with this. I was going to this local vinyasa class now and then when I first started practicing yoga in West London. And it was this lovely lady that used to run this class. It was a very low-key thing. It wasn't like a studio. She happened to have a bit of money and had a nice big house in West London. And at the back of her house, she had this large kind of atrium, this studio space that she just did for herself. And she ran this small class now and then. She was a lovely lady. And she had this beautiful radio voice that was excellent for yogic practices. And she was a very well-intentioned person. Anyway, one day in this class, there was a young Indian lad who came to the class. And it was very clear that he had obviously just moved to the UK. Just listening to his accent and listening to his kind of energy. He was obviously very new to arriving to the UK. And I clearly remember this. At the end of the class, he had this very direct conscious question he asked the teacher in a very therapeutic way, and you could say it was medicinal. He asked him about a problem he had with his bowels, and specifically something that he had an issue with his genitalia. And it was asked in the way you would ask your doctor. And it kind of just reminded me, really, a lot of us lose this focus in a way, even as teachers, I think, that really yoga is medicinal in essence, yeah? So this young lad, he saw this particular teacher as you might see a doctor, the way you might ask a doctor to help you with something because you're trying to heal something. And it wasn't about stretching the hamstrings or doing deep back bends and things like that. It was a medicinal purpose. And you could argue that this was the origins of mostly of Hatha Yoga, and you could also say of Ashtanga Yoga. Now, I'm bringing this up because this has changed, yeah? This has changed over the years, and I think that we could say that, let's word this correctly. I would say there's a certain energetic shift going on in the Ashtanga Yoga community at the moment. Some of you are obviously aware of this, and some of you aren't. And I'm behind this. I think I've been talking about this for some time, and I've been talking about some of the problems, the systematic problems I would say there are in Ashtanga Yoga, and I'm going to go a little bit more into details in that today and why that's happening, and also a little bit about this kind of movement that's happening at the moment, which you could say is about truth. It's about people speaking their voices and being heard. And what I would really say is that, there are some very bad yoga teachers out there, yeah? There are some extremely bad sociopathic yoga teachers out there. I've met many. Unfortunately, I've actually met many, yeah? I would say, if I'm being really honest, it's actually not that easy to find the good ones. Yeah, there really are some amazing, beautiful, kind Ashtanga yoga teachers out there that have a beautiful philosophy around yoga practice and healing people. Those rooms are healing. There's a love energy in those rooms, and it's coming from a place of kindness and compassion. Some rooms are not like that, yeah? Some rooms are very unhealthy. I've been in these rooms. I've met many teachers like this, unfortunately, to the point where I would say that, like I say, it's not that easy to find the really good ones, yeah? As I said to one of my students this week, some of the best yoga teachers, Ashtanga yoga teachers there are, you've never heard of, yeah? They're maybe just doing God's work in their small shalas, tending to their students and keeping a low profile, because I think that's what a lot of good teachers tend to do, because they're very wary of the path of something becoming more business orientated, or maybe too much attention changing someone's practice in itself, or even changing their teaching style, where something becomes more money focused and it loses the intention of trying to help and heal people. Now, as I've said in previous episodes, I'm not really against money. Money can come. That's an energetic quality that can happen, where if you're helping a lot of people, money comes your way, then that's something that happens. But I think when it's driving what you do and the focus of what you're doing becomes much more financially based, then maybe you could say the spiritual intentions of yoga practice and the deeper practices of yoga that aren't about flexibility, that's when I think it starts to go amiss. And I think that's what we're seeing lately. And I think you could say that's been happening for some time, where unfortunately parts of the Ashtanga yoga community have become much more financially driven, and it seems to be more important to gain followers and to get attention on Instagram, for example, than it is about helping people and creating a loving, healing environment in yoga. Now, I'm not calling out anyone in particular, yeah? That's not really my intention with this podcast. My intention with this podcast initially, when I was talking about these subjects, really was to kind of warn my students and people that were practicing with me, and what are the red flags, what are the things you should look out for when you're in environments like this, when you meet teachers like this, and really I've explained this in depth in the yoga, in the guru episode, and some other episodes around physical adjustments and things like that. There are some serious red flags where you are in a unhealthy room, and if you get that vibe, and if you get that bad intention from some teachers, it's far too damaging. You should leave. Go check out my episode on gurus and physical adjustments. There's a few other episodes I've done on this too, where I've gone into more detail. Now, you can get bad teachers in any environment, I saw this a lot in the martial arts community, for example, where there was pretty toxic teachers doing very, hurtful and damaging things to a large student base. And, I would disassociate from people like that, It's not important to me so much the financial gain that might happen from being associated to people. What's more important is a certain code of ethics and morality, especially if you're teaching yoga and you're teaching these types of practices to people. This should be, from a pyramid perspective at the top, Maybe money comes your way from that. Maybe that happens, from being in that space and teaching yoga in that way. But the monetary aspect should not be the sole focus of what you're doing. This is where things start to go amiss. Now, I've met some really toxic, fucked up teachers in yoga in my past, and I've avoided them like the plague. I don't have any association with these people, and I definitely don't do anything financial with these people, My reputation and who I'm associated to is very important, So I wouldn't want to be associated to people that are out there damaging and hurting their students, and maybe even worse, There's people like this in Norway, unfortunately. I'm sure different practitioners and teachers, you've all met teachers like this over the years, and I definitely disassociate with these people. Now, I could be associated with these people because I might make some financial gain from this. It could boost my social media presence. It could give me more workshops. There's other things that I could gain from that, but this is not important to me, This is not the main driver behind what I'm doing. So I'm not looking to gain attention or be attracted to those people in that way. And I think if you're teaching yoga and you're advocating these spiritual practices and you're aware of bad behavior, and not just bad behavior, right? We're not talking about whether someone isn't so good at adjustments, or you don't really connect with them in their personality, or, there's aspects of the room that they're teaching in that isn't quite right for you. I'm talking about, bad behavior. As I said to one of my students lately, it isn't about being a bad teacher, it's about being a bad person, Some people are very damaged, and unfortunately those damages don't get cleared within their yoga practice. It doesn't get cleared within the Ashtanga Yoga system. It just becomes another place for them to express themselves in a negative way. And unfortunately, usually they can be quite charismatic. They can quite often be very successful in some ways. And you could claim that being successful in the West could be that you have lots of Instagram followers, or that you're able to perform asanas very well in a light room, and you're able to smile a lot when you do so, These are not indications of the depth of someone's yoga practice, How flexible someone is, how strong they are, how well they are able to perform asanas choreographed together in a room that's very well lit, has nothing to do with the depth of yoga practice. And in my experience of meeting teachers in this way, it has zero to do with it, Some of the worst people I've met in my life are advanced Ashtanga Yoga teachers, I'm not saying they're all like that, and I'm not saying that you can't be an advanced practitioner and be a very good person with a good heart, and that you're teaching yoga in a good way, and that your primary focus is to care for your students. There are teachers like that. I've talked about this before on previous episodes, but there seems to be an idea in the yoga community that the people that are kind of the head of Ashtanga Yoga, or maybe leaders in this community, are the ones that are able to perform advanced asana and have lots of Instagram followers. These are not a correlation. The most deeply kind, compassionate Ashtanga teachers I've ever met are very humble, do not have a big Instagram following, and are not trying to be well known. They're just doing God's work privately. These are the people that you should be looking to for answers around morality in yoga practice. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think they really speak out, and I don't think they make their presence so well known because they don't really want to get involved in the drama of it. And they don't want to watch the cat fight, I think, that's going on at the moment for people trying to assert some sort of authority over the Ashtanga Yoga system. And it's a bit sad, to be honest, to sit back and observe what's going on in the Ashtanga Yoga community at the moment, which is why, to be honest, I ducked out of this many years ago. You know, I don't mean this in an arrogant way, but I think I kind of saw this coming, you know, many years ago. And I think that there's a competitive element to some practitioners around yoga practice. I've talked to some of my students about this. You know, some rooms are extremely competitive, yeah? Some Ashtanga rooms, there's a competitive element. I've been in rooms like this, you know, there's this carrot that's dangled of chasing asanas, gatekeeping postures, and really it's just a performance that's going on in a Mysore room, and no one is really practicing yoga. Yeah, no one is really going into the deeper elements of healing their bodies and their mind through yogic practices. It's a competition to perform asanas on any given day, and this is really glorified. Yeah, you could say that we glorify this on social media in some ways, and again, you know, the heads, the leads, these seems to be the ones that are able to perform asana very well. Again, these are not connected. Yeah. Look at the actions of people. The actions of people should really show you what kind of person they are and how well they've embodied the deeper layers of yogic practices. Not whether they can put their leg behind their head or catch their ankles in a backbend. This has nothing to do with yoga in a way. We're all drawn to asana, we're all drawn to the embodied movements of yoga and Ashtanga Yoga, but it doesn't mean someone's a good person. It doesn't mean that they're going to be kind and compassionate to their students. It just means that they've understood how to move their body in a certain way over a period of time. And it also has nothing to do with how well they can teach that system. Maybe they could guide you through primary series or intermediate series and show you the asanas, but it doesn't mean that they can teach you how to do them, especially if you're someone who's stiff, old and injured. Yeah, I'm not saying that this isn't the case. I think that what I'm saying in this podcast is that a change is needed. Yeah, again, I backed away from the Ashtanga Yoga community for quite a few years now because I could feel this energy. Yeah, I could feel this kind of perfectionism of asana, this sort of chasing Instagram followers, subscribers, and it becoming much more business orientated, and the people that were getting the most attention and seen to be the leaders in this community are much more asana based, monetary based, business based people. This to me is not what it should be about, and this is not what we should glorify. And again, in my opinion, these aren't the people you should be looking to for answers around spirituality and good conduct. It doesn't mean that they're bad people, and I'm not picking anyone out. I'm just talking in general terms around what we should be looking for as leaders and people that can guide you along the spiritual path. What are the qualities of someone who's embodied yoga at a deep level? They're generally very humble. Yeah? They're generally extremely kind. They're generally very compassionate, patient, and they don't focus on external things. Yeah? Asana will come and go, flexibility will come and go, and your strength will dissipate. Yeah? These aren't the qualities that we're looking to exemplify. Yeah? We should be looking to exemplify and promote the deeper, more moralistic aspects of yoga. It's a bit of a flip side that's gone on over the years where these things have been promoted in a large way. Now, I've been around some really bad teachers, yeah? Now, we could talk about sexual misconduct and lots of things like that, which is being spoken about at the moment. But what I've largely seen is, and I'm talking about the bad teachers, is what is probably a deep insecurity, yeah? I remember one of my a friend of mine actually went to a workshop with one of these teachers, and this teacher spent most of the workshop talking down to people, humiliating some students because they couldn't perform certain things very well, and making fun out of them, yeah? Now this person was gaining some kind of strength or some sort of confidence from making someone else feel bad that they weren't able to do the things that they were demonstrating. I mean, this isn't even something that you would have done as a teenager, yeah? It's deplorable, yeah? And unfortunately, I've met a lot of people like this. It's not just like a bad few, it's many. Unfortunately, some people, once they get some attention and they get into some sort of authoritative role, they use it as a way to manipulate people and to put other people down. There's nothing yogic about this. There's no healing that will go on in that room. And you will get no spiritual benefit from it, even if you learn how to do some asana. Avoid people like this, like the plague. Yeah? Please stop glorifying these toxic asana-focused people. Yeah? Again, someone could have a very good asana practice, but they have to embody the deeper qualities of yoga. These have to be the top. This has to be the primary thing that we seek out as students, yeah? It's been flipped, yeah? I would say that, let's word this in the right way. If you're I've talked about this on the Guru episode, if you're in a room where someone is putting people down, being very controlling, very dismissive, very authoritarian, and you can feel it when you're in rooms like that. The room is mostly about them. It's mostly about their mood and what they're trying to get from that room that day. A good Ashtanga Yoga teacher is a very selfless job. Yeah, they generally maintain a neutral space, and that space is there for you to heal and grow and learn, and you will become a better yoga practitioner from that, and your yoga practice will deepen from being in rooms like that. Probably you will excel and advance in your asana practice at the same time, yeah, but it isn't the primary focus. Yeah, when you come into that room, you can feel it. Yeah, there's lots of bad teachers out there that it's really just a competitive environment where students are competing with each other, potentially for the teacher's attention, and that teacher is encouraging that, yeah? They're encouraging a submissive behavior. I've gone into a lot of details about this on the Guru episode. Submission has nothing to do with yoga. Unfortunately, this word has sort of been linked to yoga in a way, in this term that's often used, which is about surrendering. Never surrender your power to anybody, yeah? Being pushed and pulled into positions where bones are broken and ligaments are torn, shoulders are dislocated from catching your ankles, or femurs are shattered because you're trying to put your leg behind your head. It's got nothing to do with yoga. Yeah, I'm saying this because there's a change that needs to happen in the Ashtanga Yoga community. And I think if these changes start to happen, people like myself will actually feel a little bit more drawn back into it. Because largely what I see is generally quite toxic authoritarian behavior. Yeah. And it comes from somewhere. Yeah. Now, practitioners tend to glorify the past, and they'll glorify particular places and teachers. There's enough been said about Patabi Joyce. There's been enough been said about some bad things that went on there. And there's enough been said about how that was generally hushed. A lot of that stuff that was going on there was downplayed and not spoken about. Now, I'm not going to go too much into details on that because that's been talked about largely enough. But there is a history of this in Ashtanga Yoga, unfortunately. There's a history of this in most yoga traditions, which again, it should be a warning, yeah? There is something inherently kind of dysfunctional in some of these environments, and we don't want to cultivate that. You need transparency. I've said this to people all the time. Your relationship with your teacher is a two-way street. It's not top-down. You should be able to have an open dialogue about what feels right, what doesn't feel right, and there isn't this top-down authoritarian position that's placed on you, yeah, where you're kind of told to be quiet and you're told what to do and not to speak out and speak back. Now, what I've witnessed go on in the Ashtanga Yoga community is the opposite of that, to the point where what's been exposed this week is that even on public forums, conversation is being shut down because they're trying to silence people, yeah? They're trying to silence people having open dialogue with lawsuits and things like this. It's just so fucked up, yeah? I've got to talk about this straight. It's just really twisted. Again, we're not just talking about, bad teachers. We're talking about bad people, yeah? If someone really wanted to heal something and wanted to make amends, you would have an open dialogue and be transparent about everything so that this would lead to healing and truth. By shutting conversation down, threatening people with lawsuits and shit like this is toxic, yeah? And again, all of the good teachers I've got in my head, this would never happen to them or a school they've been in or an environment they're in because they're not chaotic people. Yeah? They're calm, mindful people that don't attract chaos. Yeah? That's why we should be drawn to people like that and looking at people like that to lead the Ashtanga community. Yeah? Not these Instagram famous teachers, yeah? I'm not calling out anyone particular, but again, this isn't a mark or a gold standard of whether someone has embodied the deeper aspects of yoga. Yeah, like I say, the best teachers I've ever met, you don't know about. But unfortunately, they're the ones that aren't being sought out in these sorts of times where you probably need a steady hand and someone who understands the deeper layers of yoga to kind of sort this out a little bit. So part of me wants to just sit back and just, let it all unfold. But I think that as a teacher in the yoga community, I think it's good to speak out about these things. Now, like I say, I've been talking about this for some time, and as a warning for people that listen to me, and the toxic teachers that I know about in Norway and other places, I'll tell my students straight, like, don't go and practice with that guy or that lady. Actually, this is not just men that do this. It probably is more so, but I've met definitely lots of toxic female teachers who use the same sort of manipulative tactics that men do. It's kind of, it was quite strange the first time I witnessed this and was in a place like that, but it definitely happens. So it isn't just men. There's definitely female teachers out there that are also abusing the yoga system to gain some sort of monetary gain or power over their students. And this should be spoken about, talked about. These people should not be protected, yeah? Because if you stop dialogue and you stop talking about these things, at some level you're enabling this. And I've done a podcast just on enabling. So if you want to go and check that out, I'll go into that in more detail. I know that there's this feeling in yoga a little bit that we don't want to get involved in drama and it's better not to speak about things, but sometimes you kind of have to, yeah? Sometimes it's good just to kind of clear the air and, stop letting these people, get away with kind of abusive behavior, yeah? If you're silent with this, it will just carry on. And like I say, some of these teachers have tens of thousands of followers. They're selling courses, they're selling all these workshops. And really, a lot of students are just really not aware that these people are very bad and shouldn't be teaching yoga. Yeah, I wouldn't even work on a building site with people like this. Yeah, let alone, potentially, let's say my daughter, if I had one, or a female colleague of mine, or a male colleague, going to practice with these people, and falling into these toxic environments where there's so many accounts of this, yeah, and potentially some of these things have been going on for years with certain teachers, and I think a lot of it is down to the fact that these people have been silenced. And like I say, public forums where you should be able to discuss this, posts are being deleted, comments are being deleted. It's bad, yeah. Like, why protect these people? Why would you want to protect certain people from having consequences to their actions? It doesn't really make any sense. It doesn't help them as a person to heal and move forward. And it doesn't help students who feel that they can't talk about things. Yeah, stop trying to silence people, allow them to have a discussion and let it see where it goes. Maybe it leads to somewhere, maybe it doesn't. I'm not into cancel culture. I think that that's wrong. But I'm into open discourse. You should be able to discuss these things openly. Let people have a forum to talk. Otherwise, that pressure is just going to build and build and build. And I think that's what happened. And now there's a bit of a pressure cooker. And, things pop and it comes out a little bit more heated. If things were more open in previously, I don't think it would come out this way. But I think it's time, yeah? I've said this before. A change is needed in Ashtanga Yoga. There's various reasons I think things have kind of reached this point in the last year, and I think it's time that there is a bit more transparency around bad behavior and also around what could be inherently wrong within the Ashtanga Yoga system and some yogic traditions of this top-down authoritarianism, yeah? This is not necessary, it's not even yoga. It's just people getting a kick out of being in some sort of commanding position where they can misuse and behave badly to their students, yeah? This is not healing, yeah? I've talked about this on many episodes before. When you're in a good yoga space, yeah, there's a vibration in that room, yeah? It's a love energy, and everyone gets a kick from that, yeah? Everyone gets lifted from that. It's healing. You can feel it when you're in rooms like that. When you're not in rooms like that, it's mostly about giving your energy away to another person, and that would be that particular teacher. At the root of this, you could say, is, aspects of Ashtanga Yoga and how it's been taught, the competitiveness of how it's approached. I don't really want to blame the Joyce family and how that's taught in India, because there's lots of great teachers that have come out of my taught India practice and with the Joyce family. But there's an aspect of that, I would say, that became more business orientated and at some level more competitive. Maybe that's with the Ashtanga Yoga authorization certificates. Maybe not. It would be a good debate and a discussion to have. Is that actually making practitioners more competitive, where they're chasing certificates? This is another reason why I didn't really want to go to practice there. It's not what I was drawn to, and it wasn't the kind of energy that I wanted to put into my own practice. My goal with all of this has been the deeper layers of yoga. The asana has kind of really followed that, and that's what I like to teach, and my approach to the yogic system, not putting so much focus on how well you can perform asana on a given day, and that being the rubber gold standard of a practitioner. Like I say, I don't care what authorizations or certifications you've got. It's got nothing to do with someone's teaching ability. And again, Instagram followers, how well you can show an asana in a very well lit room with a smiley face has got fuck all to do with yoga. Yeah, it's been sold that way. Parts of it are shown that way to the public through social media, and some of that, as I've spoken about previously, I like aspects of demonstration and showing asana. The body is a beautiful thing. I'm not totally against that, but it shouldn't be such a big focus. And again, for practitioners looking for leaders and looking for people that are kind of leading certain groups in yoga, it shouldn't be about just how well someone does asana. Yeah, when you go and practice with someone, what are you looking to learn? Yeah, what is it you're looking to learn? Is it just asana, or is it the deeper practices of yoga that they embody themselves as teachers? I would say that that should be number one. The things later, asana, things like that, that can come a little bit later. But as people that we're drawn to, that's what I'm looking for. And that's the kind of people I think that should be leading the Ashtanga Yoga community. If there are going to be, or if there's going to be people that you're going to look to for guidance, not just how well someone could perform asana. And this has been proven recently. Yeah? It's been proven that this is not in any way a marker. Yeah, it's proven recently. Yeah, Instagram followers, how charismatic someone is, how well they can do asana. I'm repeating this because it's important. It's got fuck all to do with how much someone has embodied the deeper aspects of yoga practice. Yeah. What can I close with really with this? I've gone into this on other episodes, but again, I'm not into cancel culture. Just remember, yeah, these kind of toxic bad teachers, they're weak people, yeah. I'm talking out now to the people that have fallen prey to people like this. They're weak people. Most of the people I've met like this are deeply insecure. Whether they've been bullied at school or they're just generally fearful people, there is a deep insecurity in people like this that become this narcissistic, and they're not strong, powerful people. Yeah, a confident, ethical, strong man would never do anything like this. Good, ethical, strong men don't treat women like that. They don't treat people like that. I'm thinking of my father. My father was a good man. He would never have treated anybody like this. I didn't grow up like this. You don't feel better about yourself from putting other people down, yeah? You try to build people up, and you create an environment around you where you're all building each other up. That's what a good yoga room should be, yeah? Not where you have one authoritative figure feeding off everybody else. Yeah, this is super toxic. This is what I'm talking about. Like I say, there's been these different claims over the years from different students for different things, and I'm not going to go into too many details without knowing specifics, but from what I've witnessed in these types of teachers, it's just, weak men, weak, fearful people that get confidence and they get an ego boost from making other people feel bad. It's like, my God, these people should not be teaching yoga. Like I say, I wouldn't want to work on a building site with people like this. And unfortunately, they rise to these positions and they obtain certain authoritative positions because that's what they want. Yeah, they want this kind of dynamic that makes them feel good. These are not people we should be drawn to. Call them out, talk about them publicly. It's all right. Have open discourse. See where it goes. If there's nothing there, then it will get cleared. If there is something there, then they should be able to talk about it openly and sort it out. Yeah, it should be openly discussed. But yeah, I've probably said enough on that. Like I say, there's the reason I'm doing this podcast just because it's very relevant, and I think there's an energy at the moment with this. Like, I wasn't sure when this was going to happen. I wasn't sure if it was going to happen at all because, like I say, I've been observing this and thinking about this for many years, and I've just been focusing on myself really, on my own student base, and just kind of keeping it local like that. but observing the things going on in the community over the years that I don't really feel part of for the reasons discussed in this podcast. It's nice to see some things coming to light, and I hope just people aren't just jumping on a gravy train just because it's trending, but actually people are looking to make real change in Ashtanga Yoga and call out this competitive, just super asana focused perfectionism, Instagrammy, business model people. Just drop all that, yeah? Let's just get back to what the real core values of yoga are. Promote those over, basically, performative gymnastics. If you want to do that, I think it's better just to go and learn Cirque du Soleil and do gymnastics and perform and stuff. But, I understand that marketing and sales is a part of, modern day life with, I use it myself. There's levels to this, but, what kind of people are we cultivating? And again, what kind of focus are we cultivating in our practices? And again, as students, where are you putting your energy? Because, these people really wouldn't have so much influence, and these toxic teachers wouldn't have so much power if we weren't giving them our energy. And I've gone into this in previous episodes of why we're drawn to people like that. I'm not saying that people aren't victims to people like that. Yoga brings a lot of vulnerable people who are looking for help, which is why it's so deplorable. But we have to really think about it also, like why some of us are drawn to people like that we give our energy away. You don't need to surrender your power to someone. You don't need submission. These are not yogic practices. You should be in an environment that is making you stronger. I've talked about this before. You want to feel strong like a lion. You have to be very courageous to go into yoga at deep levels, and you should be in an environment with a teacher that is cultivating that energy, not just nitpicking at everything in your asana practice as if this is going to make you more spiritually enlightened. It's not. It's just more of these kind of controlling, perfectionist environments. These are not teachers I'm drawn to, and I think these aren't teachers that we should be glorifying. I've talked about this on another episode with strictness in yoga and where that comes from, why that might be a problem. Again, I feel like I've been talking about aspect to this for some time, but I wanted to kind of give a bit of a summary today just because it's relevant, and I think it's important because, like I say, I feel like there's a shift going on where these things might have the possibility to come to light, and things might get to be discussed in a more transparent way, and this should be normal. It should be normal to be able to discuss problems so that you can move forward and things progress and evolve. They're not stuck in the past in these environments where toxic behavior is hidden, subdued, and people aren't allowed to talk about what's going on that's wrong. This is not good for anybody. I think I had a few notes here. Let me just check. I've probably said enough on that today. Okay. Thanks.